Hello everybody, I wanted to share some more clips with you from this week's episode of my podcast Doing It, which is with Laura Shipp, who is a doctoral researcher into cybersecurity and period tracking apps. You may remember her from the episode of the Hormone Diaries that I did all about the 5 different fertility tracking apps that I was using. Laura helped with some of the research on that video, and also I interviewed her for that video about the privacy and data side of these apps, and we get into that and so much more in this episode. We talk about the whole femtech industry, who is it kind of for, who is it leaving out, who maybe doesn't have access to this kind of privatized healthcare in a way, and then also what does it mean for these private companies to be providing these kinds of services and products to do with our menstrual health or sexual wellness, things that can be quite sensitive information about our bodies and our health. And what does that mean in terms of its relationship with capitalism and marketing and all of that. I hope you enjoy these clips. If you want to listen to the full episode, you can do so wherever you get your podcasts, and also the full video episode is available for my patrons. So I hope you enjoy these clips. Please subscribe to my podcast Doing It. Enjoy.
So much of it is around kind of centering the story of the founder in the products. So it's often things like someone kind of talking about their fertility journey or their difficult periods, or talking about like breastfeeding their children and finding it so hard to do that on the move and things like that. And that's always such a key part of kind of like selling the product and justifying why it exists, because so much of femtech kind of talks about the ways it's trying to fill the gap that's left behind by lots of other kind of systems, whether that's healthcare or just the lack of research on things like, I think like endometriosis is something we hear kind of a kind of classic example of that, just like how long it takes to get diagnosed, how little research and how kind of, I guess, how little understanding there is of it as a condition. And I think that's kind of like demonstrated in femtech. All the different parts of the system kind of come together, and they, I guess, kind of repackage that as saying like, here's the hole, here's the issue, and we'll fill it with this particular product that we've designed that will allow you now to track, you know, X, Y, and Z, and so you can live a kind of healthier and better life. And so much of it is kind of saying like, so my experience as someone who has endometriosis is this, and this is how this product that I've designed kind of solves that problem for me, and it will solve it for you too. They call it femvertising, so kind of targeting, targeting particularly millennials with imagery and like really value-based marketing, because that, I guess they know that a lot of millennials, myself included, are like quite into buying from like brands and industries that we feel like kind of, you know, are living up to the things that we try and do on a day-to-day level. So
they need a feminist mission statement.
Yeah, and so many of them literally do have that, like, or like use those kind of words like mission statement or like empowerment. It literally has a language. So yeah,
I guess one of the things that this makes me think about is like, how much can we be cynical and kind of like question this and interrogate it, and like how much should we be celebrating that feminist values have money behind them, have mainstream audiences? Like, where is this line?
yeah.
Because on the one hand, you're like, this is actually really good that feminist values are like, I guess, popular enough that companies feel like they have to adopt them in order to make money. And in a capitalist society, like, money rules all. There you go. That was me trying to celebrate it, and then I immediately went cynical.
I know, and I think that's the hardest part. Like, I feel the same. I think it's really hard to balance that, but it seems like maybe those feminist values can sometimes only go so far or only take us so far if at the end of the day that the idea is that you're selling a product. if you're always kind of at the end of I guess trying to make money from that. I think particularly with health, because for me, I feel like should health be something that we make money from, or that money should be made from?
I
Does that
mean,
make
it
sense?
is. If you look at like the US and
Yeah.
big pharma and everything, it is something that people have made
Yeah.
money off and make like stupid amounts of money off.
Yeah.
But is that is that
Yeah.
ethical?
Yes, because I guess with all of those things, that there's the kind of question of who's getting left behind by that, who's still kind of who's not included in those kind of feminist slogans. And I definitely see with a lot of companies that kind of so much of the branding and the imagery can really be focused around white women, and it's kind of selling this very clean version of menstruation or sex. And I feel like just a lot kind of gets left out of those feminist messages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And like, especially if it's about sex or fertility or anything, it's very much like your cis straight white middle class woman. Like,
Yeah,
I feel
literally.
very represented.
yeah
And
it's
I'm
got
like,
me down.
yeah, exactly. It's nailed me down, but I am but one white woman. So I guess one of the questions that comes up a lot when it comes to things like period menstrual tracking apps is the data and privacy element. And the question of, should I even care about what these companies may or may not be doing with my data? Like, how does it affect me and my day-to-day life? And like, will I actually feel any of those consequences?
I think that's such a good question, because I think a lot of the time, almost like the biggest and the hardest part of it is the fact that it doesn't necessarily change our day-to-day life in ways that we can perceive, but it's kind of often changing the structures or impacting the structures that kind of shape our life, I guess. So I guess the example I think about with these apps is the fact that a lot of them are kind of generating these massive data sets around periods and health and kind of, just want to say, vaginas generally, like and I guess like that's fine, that's really good. We have kind of limited amounts of data on these areas, and especially in terms of large numbers, but the ways that those kind of data sets get used can be both kind of generating further money for the companies that are kind of doing this work in the first place. It could be kind of so one of the apps, Glow, have kind of they have a kind of parent company, which is a big data lab, and all of that data is being fed into their big data lab. And again, it's really unclear like how that might kind of I guess feed back down into the ways that kind of algorithms get produced, or new kind of products get brought out and things like that. And also, if this data kind of ends up shaping health and healthcare, from what it seems like, a lot of the people that use femtech and use fertility tracking apps, or kind of period tracking apps more generally, it's not kind of an even spread across society. It can often be white, middle class, highly educated women. So if we're getting data sets that are based just on those groups, then how is that going to, and that's kind of then, shaping where research is going, where new products and kind of like drugs or all kinds of other things.
And I guess
come
it
out.
like further marginalizes people who are already marginalized in terms of healthcare and access to all of those kinds of things.
Totally, and further erases them from that system at all.